Hi guys, Chris Bristow, Big Rig 150 Automotive News, and got a little backlog of a article. Now I do not remember who the author of this was. I do believe it was off the Jalopnik, I always butcher it, website Jalopnik. And I forget who the author is, so I'm not trying to steal any thunder. I'm not trying to report something. I'm just going over something I feel is important, especially in today's economy. Now, a lot of this news in these folders is a little dated. So, you said, "Oh yeah, I heard this." Well, like I said, I have a backlog of these, and I want to get through them. So. Basically, General Motor executives are saying we ain't doing so good globally as we thought we were. Now, there are other articles in here. I'm going to touch on some of them that tie into this. But they were offering almost 18,000 buyouts last November and December to eliminate jobs. Kind of bad timing for just before Christmas, but you know that's the higher ups for you. And what this was meant to do was to basically get rid of a lot of the fat that's up in General Motors to try to make it a little more streamlined, especially around the world. And the other thing that they have done is they have also closed some other plants. So you're losing jobs there, which you're losing union jobs. You're losing blue collar jobs. Most of the jobs that were originally done were supposed to be white collar, but there's always some backlash. Now this is it says its third quarter earnings released on Halloween showed its first year-over-year earnings growth since the first quarter of 2017. Okay, so that's a good thing, but you're trying to trim more fat. I'm all for keeping companies viable, because if you can trim the fat up top, you can actually make the cars a little less expensive, which helps the salespeople, which helps the consumer buy cars a lot easier. Now these buyouts were also voluntary. I'll actually read what it says. GM offered voluntary buyouts to roughly 17,700 eligible employees in North America with at least 12 years of service. The company was aiming for 8,000 voluntary buyouts aimed among its salaried employees as part of a total headcount reduction of 14,000. Spokesman Pat Morrissey. He said about 2,250 workers accepted severance agreements by the November 19th deadline. So, these were initially voluntary. And usually when they have these kind of severance packages, they're usually very nice, very good packages to entice you to want to retire or leave. But everyone is different. Every severance package is different. And this was also a lot to trim corporate fat. It did also eventually fall down to the guys and girls on the assembly line. So that hurts a little bit. Now here's something I don't agree with, but I just going over it, and it kind of aggravates me. GM warned this summer that the trade war instigated by President Donald Trump could force job cuts in the United States. Trump was irate with GM's announcement this week, tweeting on Tuesday that he was very disappointed with the company and CEO Mary Barra for idling plants in Ohio, Michigan, and Maryland. Now, they just closed the plant in Ohio about a month and a half ago, end of February, beginning of March. So, but to blame this on the president, it's nonsense. You should have the foresight to see things through. You should have the foresight to keep your house in order. Now, General Motors is kind of following Ford in this regard. That they were offering payoffs also. Ford's, they didn't say what it was, the exact breakdown. But what Ford offered to their salaried employees was, if you're over 55 and at least 10 years with Ford, 65 and older with at least 5 years with the company, or 30 years of service. That's how they offered those packages. To me, that's one way of trimming some bigger fat, but you most likely gave nice severances, especially people that have been there for 30 years. The worst part is some of these people that have been there 30 years, they're in their mid-40s, mid-40s to mid-50s, so you still got to now figure out 10 years. Hopefully you have a pension and everything else so that you fall on your feet. So, but one thing Ford did not do is they did not cut assembly jobs. They did not close factories. They did cut shifts at two of their assembly plants. Their Louisville assembly plant and their Flat Rock assembly plant. So they didn't cut the jobs there, but they kind of cut the shifts back, cutting the overtime and everything. Because that's the way it is. And they moved people from factories to factories. And I'm sure they paid for the moving and everything else. So that was part of the idea. How can you do it without costing jobs and still make all the vehicles? Well, you cut production back a little bit. Now, I know this has actually caused a little bit of a backlash in sales, because the Louisville assembly plant actually is the Super Duty plant, and they've cut production on the Super Duty by a bit because of this. So that does hurt. But the one thing that they also cut back was that Flat Rock. Flat Rock is the Mustang. So that hurts that. Now, GM just closed a shop in Ohio that was producing the Chevy Cruze in the United States. So now that factory is going to be idle. Nobody's going to be working in it. Instead of trying to possibly retool the factory to work on another vehicle, you're now just closing a factory. And now you're losing all those jobs. That's hard on a community. That's hard on a city that's depending on that. That's bad on the state that's depending on that kind of money. But you have to look at it as car production's down. Well, why not retool the Chevy Cruze to do your Equinox or your Traverse? Do something to do what you have to make it work. Ford's Fusion is made in Mexico and in the States. I believe it's Chicago. I could be wrong. But they're not closing a factory, but they're not making the Fusion in the United States anymore. They're going to make it everywhere else, if at all. And their production's down, so they've cut it pretty much to Mexico. And they retooled. That's the name of the game. Retool these factories. Get into other things. You're too one-dimensional. In the next 10 years, we're going to have driving autonomous cars, I think, if not sooner. It's not going to be perfect technology first, but it's going to be there. General Motors, Ford, Fiat Chrysler, Toyota, Honda, Hyundai, Kia, Nissan. They need to start thinking. They need to start revitalizing. With GM, they do have a nice program, but I think they need to do better. And I think they need to do it soon. This is Chris signing off. Have a great night, guys.